Welcome to Tips for the Transition, where we have deep, meaningful conversations about life. We talk about how significant changes like divorce, grief, and career change can affect us, our family, our relationships, and our work, and how to move beyond them. I'm your host, Maria Tomás-Keegan, certified career and life coach for women, and I'm here to support you through the messy seasons of life so you can answer big questions like who am I now and how do I move on from here? If you're ready to consider new options, be inspired, and meet incredible women who are on this life journey with us, you're in the right place. You'll find something in each episode to give you hope and encourage you to move from panic to powerful, from rocky to resilient, and from upside down to right side up. This is Tips for the Transition. Hello, welcome today to Tips for the Transition, the Career Roadmap podcast. And I want to thank you for being here. And in case you haven't watched this podcast before, we have been the number one most watched show on Voice America TV for 16 months running. And now we are expanding our reach into live streaming on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube, as well as on all your favorite podcast channels, the audio podcast channels. So, what are they? Stitcher, I don't even know what they all are because this is the first year we're going to them. So I hope you enjoy these weekly conversations with inspiring women. And we're come here every Wednesday, except on holiday weeks. I suspect I'll take the week off as we help women around the world become more confident, resilient, and brave in their careers and in their lives. I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan. I'm a career and life coach for women, and I specialize in transition. And I want you to know that I create these podcasts, these episodes, as resources to help women navigate the bumpy roads in life. So if anything strikes a chord as you listen or watch, I'd like you to know that you can reach out to me, you can reach out to my guest in a number of different ways, and they are all links for you at the bottom of in the show notes or in the comments section, depending on where you're watching or listening. So my guest today is a friend and a colleague of mine, and she is one of the most gentle, caring women I know. She is Linda Kroll, an IFS therapist, internal family therapist, in fact. She's a mediator and an author, and she's trained under Deepak Chopra and is one of only 300 certified master teachers. I asked Linda to join us today because she has used her decades of experience in professional training to help others communicate more compassionately. And in our world today, we certainly need to find more ways to relate with ourselves and each other with less judgment and more love. And her process of compassionate communication encourages you to be your best self, let go of limiting beliefs, unburden pain from the past, and relate from the heart. And you're going to hear those phrases coming from Linda probably more than once because she means them so deeply. She's authored books and created online programs to help us heal our relationships with ourselves and with others. So today we're going to talk about shoulding on ourselves. I wonder how many of you have done that. And I am so excited to bring Linda back on the show. She's been a guest with me more than once, and we're going to get this party started. Yes. And there's Linda. Hello, Linda.
Hello, Maria. I'm so glad to be here.
Oh, I'm delighted to have you. Thank you so much for joining us again here. And I really would love to just jump right in if you're okay with that.
I'm ready.
Okay. So let's talk about what it means to should on ourselves.
Well, unfortunately, it means what it sounds like. And I won't say what it sounds like, but it's a way of putting expectations, judgments, limitations, old stories coming from our egos, coming from how we think we should be in the world based on what we learned as a child or what we decided how to manage our lives. And when we should on ourselves, we're really listening to marching directions from our egos and not really hearing the messages from our soul. So it's my goal to help others really tune in to what really lights them up and to stop the negative self talk that keeps them limited. So that's the overview.
Okay. So what does it sound like? What does it sound like when we are shoulding on ourselves? What are we
Sounds like
saying?
you're shitting on yourself. It sounds like you're throwing mud on your divine essence. It sounds like either your ego that we think sometimes makes us grandiose, our ego sometimes keeps us small, as in, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do this, you should be a certain way. So there are so many ways that we grow up with certain messages and we keep living with those messages that limit us in everything we're doing. Excuse me. And we've all got transitions that we go through, which is why I love being on your show. So whether we transition from things we learned in childhood or goals we had in adulthood, or things happen to us like health issues or divorce or career change or the loss of a loved one, if we're shooting on ourselves, we keep a very narrow perspective of how life could be versus really expanding our vision.
Mm, I love what you just said. We're limiting ourselves when we are, I should be like her, right? I should live up to their expectations of me. Yeah, I so love
I
that.
should stay in a job that isn't fulfilling. I should stay in a relationship that isn't meeting my needs. I should get over my grief sooner than I am. All the different shoulds that constrain us and
Right.
make us a smaller version of who we really are.
That is such a good, such a good description of that. I love that. So you talk a lot about compassion and being compassionate.
Yes.
So, how do we become more compassionate with ourselves so that we can expand ourselves and stop the limiting stuff going on?
Thank you. Let me start with a quote by Rumi, who said, "We're not just the drop in the ocean, we're the entire ocean in a drop."
I love that.
So we have a small self, an ego based self, a self that has judgments and expectations of ourselves and others. And we have a soul. We're a body, mind, and spirit. And I've had the honor and blessing of being able to learn from many different mentors. Richard Schwartz in Internal Family System has helped me understand what being in self means, capital S self, where we're calm, clear, compassionate, connected, curious, creative, confident, and grateful. So when we're in that self, we come from that oceanic soul, body, mind, spirit. We listen to our spirit more. I also had the benefit of studying with David G. and David Simon and Deepak Chopra and Claire Diab at the Chopra Center, where we talk about the soul questions and how to get in touch with that higher consciousness that we all have. So, first of all, the first answer is to know you already have it. You've got some limiting beliefs, you've got some pain from the past, you've got some expectations and shoulds that were put on you by your family of origin. But at your core, you are light, you are love, you are compassion. And once you switch into that essence of your divinity, you can take a look at all of your thoughts, all of your feelings, all of your judgments, all of your expectations, and really send love to all those parts of you so that they can align with whatever your true dharma and your true purpose are. So I hope that isn't too heady, but that was a synopsis.
Yeah, so let's get, and I know you're going to share some tips with us at the end, and I don't want to rain on that parade, but I'd like to just get a little deeper. Not that you didn't get deep, but more practical perhaps about that question that I asked, and how can we become more compassionate with ourselves? What are some of the things we can do that give us more, give us a break, right? Cut ourselves a break, be more,
Give ourselves
more grace.
Yes. So one of the things we can do is to meditate. And when we meditate, what we do, even if you meditate 2 minutes a day, you don't have to get on the floor and become a yogi and spend 30 minutes twice a day. It's just practicing not listening to what your mind is telling you. Because the constant cacophony of I should do this, I shouldn't do this, I want to do this, I don't want to do that, is confusing. And it often keeps us in a state of spinning, procrastination, stuckness, indecision. So if you meditate, you quiet your mind, and then you can listen to the messages of your soul. So meditation is a way to do it.
Okay. All right. So I love that. Just quiet things down a bit, and go inside.
Yes.
And feel, right? Feel what it is you need right now.
Exactly. So when you go inside, you can just give awareness to where, in fact, let's do that right now. We can do it in about 10 seconds. Just take some belly breaths, everybody. Breathe 3 big breaths into your abdomen. 2 more. And when you're doing that, you're inviting more self-energy, and you're inviting the parts of you that are carrying your judgments, your expectations, your self-criticism to relax a little bit so that you can close your eyes, go inside and just breathe. And just notice. Notice what you're feeling. Notice what you're thinking. And as you notice these parts of you, let these parts of you notice your higher self, your connection to God, your connection to your spirit, your connection to the universe, your connection to oneness. Just go inside and give awareness to the parts of you that need it. Give compassion to the parts of you that are holding outdated judgments or beliefs. And in that compassion, they can shift their roles. And your inner critic can become your inner coach. And your judgment can turn into gratitude. And you do that just by going inside and paying attention for even a moment to what you're thinking and what you're feeling. And at the same time, connecting with the true self, capital S self, that's already there.
Beautiful. All right. That's great. Thank you for that. I love that practice. And for me, when I do that, when I realize that things are going just a little bit nuts right now, like it did for me this morning, I had some technology challenges this morning, and I just had to breathe deeply and just calm the chaos so that I could think clearly and come back to it, and I found a solution.
Right. So, and then dealing with your thoughts, because when we look at our thoughts and write them down and don't believe them, Byron Katie talks about not believing our thoughts. But when we realize that some of our thoughts come from our family of origin and the dogma and the beliefs that we were taught, and we give ourselves permission to think outside that box, we also need to turn our directions towards our feelings, because a lot of times we ignore them. We exile our feelings in IFS. We push aside the feelings that are those that we don't feel we want to show the world. And then we manage by showing the world how good we are, competent we are, caretaking. And when we can't manage those extreme exiles coming in to feel, some of us numb out in different ways. We get extreme. I go eat chocolate or I work too much. Some people take drugs or alcohol. So when you're in self, you're aware that all these parts hold meaning, hold purpose, and want to help you. And turning to your feelings is really important. And I'm learning that more than ever. I think that I recently felt that some of my feelings were like opening Pandora's box. And if I got there, I would let out all of the anguish and the pain and the sadness and the indecision and the self-judgment. And when I researched Pandora's box, what's at the bottom of Pandora's box is hope. And I think if we allow ourselves to feel our feelings, move through our feelings, whether those feelings are about what to do about your career, or what to do about your relationship, or what to do about your health or a loss, when we allow ourselves to truly feel our feelings, we can move through them with a great deal of compassion and self-care.
Yeah. All right. Would you mind sharing with us a little bit about your own story of reinvention?
Thank you. It's been many transitions, some of which I chose, some of which happened. I grew up in a loving family with a father who was manic depressive, so mental illness was in my past. I had some boundary violations as a child and a teen. I was infertile for a while before I had my two beautiful children. I had a chronic illness. I've had different degrees that I've used and not used. I've had health challenges. And 2 months ago today, I lost my beautiful younger daughter. So in each of those transitions, I found that I kept shoulding on myself, like the little engine that could, only it was a little engine that should. And each time I would take myself down a path of what I should be doing professionally or personally. And I think my daughter has given me permission to become more present, become more authentic, to become more vulnerable, and to transition into truly sharing who I am without shoulding on myself, or more importantly, without should nodding on myself. So that's what I'm transitioning into, and also helping, I hope, other people do the same, to transition into the best version of who they are so that you can shine your light without needing, as Marianne Williamson said, to hide your light. Because in shining our light, we give permission to others to shine theirs. So I think my transition that you and I have been talking about for a long time has come with actually my daughter's passing, from changing the focus that I was on of my online courses, of my certification process, of which email to send out, to really listening into what I want to be talking about, what I want to be writing. And I'm writing a lot about her. I'm writing a lot about how to deal with the loss in a way that brings grace rather than total grief. And I think that I feel her presence as she's just saying, go on, Mom, get out there. So I think that's the transition.
That is. Thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that your vulnerability. I know it's fresh for you. And we have been talking about your transition for a while, and you kept telling me it hasn't fully evolved yet, and it's and now it has.
It has.
All right, so let's get back to compassion.
Yes.
Tell us what is compassionate communication? What does it look like? What does it sound like?
What it sounds like was the 4 principles you mentioned, but I share with my clients and in everything I write a way to truly communicate from what I'm calling your highest self, that calm, compassionate, divine presence that you are. How to look at what you believe and let go of many of those. I feel we're all born enlightened, but we have to let go of what we think we already know. So whatever you think you already know may not be true. The third part is, how do we unburden the pain from the past? How do you stay in the present without ruminating on what happened to you or projecting it into the future, and how not to trigger it with your partner or in the workplace, so that if something happens to you, it triggers a well of pain that you haven't processed. So connect to your best self, let go of your limiting beliefs and judgments about yourself, your partner, your coworkers, unburden pain from the past, and then truly relate from your heart, not your head, but your heart. So find a way to drop down into that energy, that heart space, and then relate to yourself and everybody else in your life from there. So that's the hope.
So that sounds simple, not easy for a lot of us.
Right.
We live in our heads.
Yes.
Right? And maybe compete with our hearts. Can you talk about that just for a second?
Well, we compete with our hearts, and we also compare ourselves to others. So we compare ourselves to what we think we should be, how we should show up in the world. Be nice, be pleasing, be caretaking, don't make waves, don't ask for what you need, which of course is the ingredients for codependency, which is, and I view codependency on a continuum, that we're all caretakers on some level, but where we get on the continuum, where taking care of other people's needs is more important than taking care of our own, we're in codependent territory. And we don't set appropriate boundaries, we don't ask for what we need, we're perfectionists. We don't like to say no. We avoid conflict. We look to others for their opinions of us to define who we are. So take a deep breath with me if any of that resonated, because I'm a recovering codependent. And when I realize that I'm efforting to accomplish something I think I should be doing, I realize that it's not really my soul talking to me. I like to say that I try to answer the call, but I'm never sure who's calling, my ego or my soul. So if life becomes a struggle, if you're unhappy, if you're stressed, if you're in conflict, if you're in indecision, if you're stuck, if you're in procrastination, deep breath with me. I would invite all those parts to tea. In IFS, we work with the parts of ourselves to offer them compassion. And we listen to the concerns of each one. And when we listen with compassion to what our parts believe, they can shift in their belief, they can shift in their behavior, and they can allow us to show up to be the light that we are. So when you're in your head, when your ego is running the show, you're usually struggling. When you're listening for inspiration, when you're quieting your mind and tapping into your higher consciousness, Stark calls it your inner wise self. When you listen to those messages, your life becomes more one of ease and flow. And I'm a work in progress. I do not always walk my talk. I am pretty much, I describe myself sometimes as an ADD, HSP, NUT, which is that I have attention deficit disorder. I'm a highly sensitive person. I'm a bit of a nut. So even though I know all this, I don't always do all this. And the poem that I found for you for No More Shoulds was one I wrote 5 years ago. So we know it's kind of like we're all Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. We're all looking for something outside of ourselves that we think we need, but we've already got it. We already know it. Now we just have to be it and stop shooting ourselves in the meantime.
Yeah, and we are all works in progress. Those of us who teach others what we've learned are often, that's why we all coaches need coaches. So we get called on those times when we are doing, we are being the pot that calls the kettle black kind of thing. Yeah. So I appreciate your saying that. You know, you touched on codependency. I'd like to ask you a question about that. Um, how does it affect our ability to change being codependent?
Well, when you're being codependent, you're often looking to other people for approval. There's a lot of enmeshed boundaries, whether it's in addiction issues, whether um, I've got a cartoon of a convention of functional families, and only one person is in the convention because we all come from some kind of dysfunction. Even in perfect families, you have to be perfect. So when we grow up with certain expectations or shoulds, and it affects how we relate to others, if we're looking from an external locus of control, if we're looking for other people's opinions to define us, then we're not really tapping into what's true for us. So we live our lives to please others. We avoid conflict. We're very perfectionist, which is limiting. So many shoulds involved in that. So once you know you are codependent, and if you're in a relationship with an addict, if you grew up with any kind of responsibilities as a child that you shouldn't have had, or family secrets, or mental illness, I would suggest getting to a 12-step meeting, an Al Anon meeting, or any 12-step program that helps you learn how to be your best self without needing to take care, rescue, and save others, but also be a good person who can offer to others whatever you can. And Melanie Beattie wrote a couple wonderful books, Codependent No More and Beyond Codependency, that lay it out. Because codependency is it's a lifelong issue. And you have to be vigilant when you're wondering if you're shooting on yourself to please others, or it's something you really internally desire and are inspired to do. And that's what you should be listening to. Not that's what you could be listening to. It happens all the time.
We catch ourselves
All the time. Right.
all the time.
All
Yeah.
the time.
Yeah. Good catch, Linda. Good catch. Now, you have shared with me your analogy of the caterpillar and the butterfly before, and I would love it if you would share it with our audience, because I think it will touch a lot of people and resonate highly. Would you share that with us?
Absolutely. Thank you. Um, well, I think we all start out as caterpillars, and we're crawling along in our lives, leading the lives we think we should, or the lives that were laid out for us. And then something happens, a transition happens, and we go into the chrysalis. And we don't know what we're supposed to happen next because it's dark and we've lost kind of our grounding and we don't know what's to come. And this is often the liminal state, it's called, where things are quiet before they pick up again. And we each go through that in our lives, where we leave one scenario, one job, one relationship, and we go into this dark unknown of what's next. How do I get out of this? Who will I be when I come out of this? So in the chrysalis, we just have to make peace with the not knowing. And in the stages of grief, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross talks about denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And I'm reading David Kessler's book now about finding meaning, which is the 6th stage of grief. But when we're in that liminal state, that in between where we were to where we're going, we don't have the answers. And we just have to have faith and trust, which is not always easy, to have faith and trust that if we stay here and be calm and be quiet, we will transition to where we're supposed to be next. And that's when the butterfly emerges. But even that is transition because the wings are wet. And until you get your bearings and really feel comfortable, you can't really fly. And then you do. And then it's a whole different perspective on life. So instead of just crawling or being quiet and confused, you've now reached your full potential. And when you do that, it's hard to turn back. When you really move from living an ego-based life of fear or judgment or blame or criticism to a more spiritually based life of faith and trust and gratitude and hope, your whole world shifts. And you can do that no matter where you are, no matter what you're transitioning into, through, or out of. And you do it just by knowing you can, just believing.
I love that. I love hearing it every time, every time. It is such a wonderful way to understand what happens to us in transition. And of course, the metamorphosis of the butterfly is the quintessential um, description of that.
It's also on
But
my Facebook page. That's been my picture up there forever, is the butterfly. And it's also the way I see my daughter. So whenever I see a butterfly, I
beautiful.
know she's one.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. It's interesting you said that, because at my brother's funeral, the butterflies, multiples of them, came. And that's what I was thinking at that time, that was Larry. Yeah. Beautiful.
And believing is part of it. And leaning
Right.
into the beliefs is also part of it. I've had several different cancer experiences. And after one where I was miraculously healed, one of my cousins, and I will not mention her name, but she said to me that when I didn't need chemo or radiation at that time, she said, "Oh, Linda, that makes me so happy. That could almost make me believe all that shit that you believe." And what I love about it is, since my daughter passed, I found a grace that I didn't know would be coming. So I'm not sure if I'm in shock, if I'm in denial, if I'm spiritually bypassing what I could be feeling, or if I really do believe all this stuff, which I do, that there is a table in the sky, that we'll all be united, that her spirit is around me. And I asked my brother, when he was suffering so much for me, to lean into my belief, to lean in a little bit, even if he couldn't believe it at all, just to give him some relief that there is meaning. And finding meaning is part of the tips that I'm going to share in a little bit.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. All right. Well, great segue into this final segment of our show. It is the last thing we always do at the end of each episode here. And it's why we call this show Tips for the Transition. So I ask my guests always to bring some, practical tips and strategies that our audience can take away of real value and maybe put to use right away. So Linda, let's do it. Share your first tip with us.
All right. Well, some we've already covered, so I'll go over it quickly.
Okay.
But the first one is to learn compassionate communication. Learn how to connect to yourself. Learn what brings you to your higher self. It could be journaling. It could be walking. It could be being in nature. It could be taking deep breaths. It could be yoga. There's many ways to get to your best self. So, and it starts with exquisite self-care. So really make your own self-care a priority. Not what you should be doing for others, not even what you should be doing for yourself, but listen for the messages of what you really want and move in that direction. And then letting go of your limiting beliefs just means you allow yourself to recognize you may not have all the answers, but you can learn by being present. And to unburden the pain from your past, call a friend, call a therapist, journal with the parts of you that are holding certain beliefs or feelings, and just listen to yourself. And as you unburden that pain, you have a lot more compassion for yourself, and you also have compassion for everybody else in your life, which is important. And then relate from your heart means do that breathing, go inside, don't be afraid of Pandora's box. Open it up, feel your feelings, share your deepest truth. And as you connect from your heart, all of your relationships will improve. I always say that love is the answer, but it starts with loving yourself. So make your self-care your priority. So that's tip number one.
Wow. There's a lot in that tip. I can't believe you have more.
I do.
All right, so let's go to tip number 2 then.
Tip number 2 is, I learned it at the Chopra Center from David G. and my other teachers there, about the soul questions. So when you are not sure about what you want, there are 3 soul questions to ask yourself. The first is, who am I? The second is, what do I want? And the third is, what is my dharma or purpose? So just take a pen and paper sometime and say, who am I? And you may list it as your roles or your responsibilities, but basically your love and light at your core. And what do you want? Put it down. Just throw it out to the universe. What you want career-wise, professionally, personally, relationship. Put it all out there. And then the third is, what is my dharma? How do I use my unique gifts and talents to help and to serve? So who am I? What do I want? What is my purpose? Then take a deep breath with me and let go of the questions. And then stay present in your life so that the universe can show you the answers. So if you stay present, honest, vulnerable, you're going to be led in the direction of your highest good. And you have to trust that and believe that and move in that direction. So the soul questions and staying present will be helpful.
Okay, I love asking questions. And I think that is a wonderful way for people to, and those are big questions, right? I often suggest that you break some of those really big questions down into smaller questions so that they might be a little easier to start answering. But I love, asking ourselves questions and answering them honestly by writing them is such a good practice.
Yes.
There's so much insight that comes from that. Beautiful.
And 2 more, one I'll make short because we already covered it, was remember you're a butterfly. And if you don't like the ending of whatever's happening right now, it's not the end. So keep on keeping on. And the 4th step is be grateful. To just be grateful for it all. And I've had to practice gratitude a lot in the last couple months because I have to find meaning in the fact that my younger daughter is no longer here. So in finding the meaning, I'm grateful for the time we had. I'm grateful for my other daughter, son, and grandchildren, my family and friends. I'm grateful for being alive and being able to honor her memory. I'm grateful for what I'm able to share if I listen to my inner wisdom and guidance from her. So wherever you are in your life right now, what's ever going on, find a way to be grateful, because it's from that gratitude that we can be compassionate with our experience, be compassionate with everyone else's experience, and really find more peace, love, and joy in our lives, in our hearts, in our relationships, in our careers, and hopefully the world. And that's great.
Linda, thank you so much for that. Thank you for being so vulnerable, for sharing your story, and all of that I don't know anyone who is quite as centered and loving and caring as you. And you share that so easily. It just oozes out of you. That's why I love having you as a guest. And I am sure that our audience today has loved it as much as I do.
Thank you. If you talk to people that really know me, they'll tell you how crazy I am, but I'm glad.
I know that side of you too.
I also have the ability to share this aspect. And that's what I'm hoping you'll all do, is no matter how you judge yourself, know how divine you are, and just go out and be that light.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great message to leave us with. And I know that there are going to be some people who are watching and listening who will want to get in touch with you. So let's share with them the one best way, and then I'll tell them how they get the rest.
Okay. One best way is to go to lindakroll.com. And if you /thrive, put THRIVE on the end of that, you'll get my compassionate communication self-care kit that has a meditation to get to self and a few other gifts for you to really help you jumpstart this process. So lindakroll.com /thrive.
That is fabulous. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing a free gift with the audience. I appreciate that. All right, my dear.
You are, as I said before we went on, just your heart, your ability to connect, the gifts that you share with the world, and your invitation to really share honestly and openly in service to so many others is really an inspiration. So I want to thank you for all the wonderful work you do in the world.
Thank you so much for that, Linda. That touches my heart. Thank you. All right. And I want to, we have to unfortunately call this show a wrap. And I want to thank everyone for watching and listening. I appreciate that you're part of this community. And as I said at the top of the show, I love creating and sharing resources for women. And as a career and life coach, I work with women to help them navigate the challenges of their life and career to make it just a little easier and more graceful for them. So, if something in this episode resonates with you, please take a look at what's below the video, either in the comments section or in the show notes, depending on where you're watching or listening. All of the links for Linda, her free gift, her website, her email, they're all there. And there are a bunch of links there for me to get in touch with me as well. So I invite you to continue the conversation with us. And you can do that by joining my Facebook group, which is called the Career Transition Roadmap. So take a look on Facebook and join us there. And we can, as I said, continue the conversation. I know that everyone is going through tough times around right about now as a result of the pandemic. But I believe it is our time to thrive. And I would love it if you would join me so that we can thrive together. Until next time, I'm Maria Tomás-Keegan, helping you turn transition into triumph.